Yo, what's up, you guys? So today we're talking about focusing, sharper photos, basically getting the best out of your camera that you can possibly do. No matter what camera it is, we want the best photos that we can produce. So we're going to go over a ton of stuff. Maybe we'll do some back focusing. We'll do some camera tricks or camera tips. We'll do a little bit of show and tell where I can show you some of my images. I'll show you how I've used it on people, and I'll show you how I've used it on animals as well. So this is kind of something that will help you out in any realm when you're talking about trying to get better focus. Yeah, so stick around. Okay, so the first part of this is camera basics. So we know that we need autofocus or manual focus dialed in. That's key. That's first off. So making sure that your ISO, shutter speed, and aperture are dialed into the right place is first off. Once you know that, then you can work on these other pieces. If you haven't seen that, check out the rest of the YouTube channels and stuff like that for good explanations on that. There's plenty already in that. But once you have that, come back to this, because this is where it gets good. So what we need to do is actually dial it in for a photo, and especially if we're talking something close up, something like this, or even like something like this. Like, obviously, if you're this close, you need to be sharp, because this is your subject, and if any of this is out of focus, it's going to look bad. It's going to look real bad. So there's a couple of ways of going about getting that in focus besides just using your autofocus. So there's a couple of modes in my camera, and I'm sure they're in many others. They just might be named a couple of different things. But one thing you want to do is, well, there's really two things. So the first one deals with single autofocus or single focus points. So whatever your camera calls that, mine looks like a little rectangle, and it'll put it directly in the middle of the screen. And then with mine, I actually have a touch screen LCD, so what I can do is move the point. So if I want to adjust composition left, right, up, down, or whatever. But the point is that it's only going to focus in that single location. That's really key, because what you're doing is telling the camera this is where the focus is. It's not over here and it's not down here. It's right where that indicator is. So when you do that, you're taking away those multiple focus points. So if you're trying to get something low depth of field, like a portrait. So if we're going to shoot this right here, right? So let's dial this in. If we're going to shoot this, I want that either on this side or this side, depending on how close that eye is. So if I'm turning this way, we're right here. If I turn this way, we're right here. Because we as humans draw our eyes to the subject's eyes. So if it has an eye, you want it to be focused like that. So the second part of this is dealing with metering, because when you do that and you want the proper metering, if you're that close and you have a single point located in your image that you're trying to hone down on, you don't want metering that's metering your background or metering the left or right of the image. You want it to be right where that focus point is. So this is called spot metering. And again, some cameras might call it a little bit different. The indicators might be a little bit different in the back of the camera, but it's called spot metering essentially, and it's just looking for a single location, and that's what it's judging its metering off of. So if you're not an expert with light metering, like I'm not, or most people aren't, use this for that, because it'll help you. So you'll have essentially a little rectangle and then a circle around that, and that'll be where your focus and your metering are focused on. So the other part of this is your actual shutter mode. So when I'm running and gunning in the streets, it's going to be a little bit different. So what I might do is use continuous, and that's essentially where, as long as I hold down the shutter button on my camera, it's going to fire whatever, as long it goes as fast as your camera allows it to go. Whatever model you have, some are a little bit faster, some a little bit slower, but that's the continuous mode. And then there's also a high speed and a low speed to that. So it'll go super fast, or it'll go kind of just steady shutter. But you don't want either one of those when you're dealing with a subject that is pretty slow. I would say humans and portraiture, or if you're dealing with animals that aren't fast moving, if you can get them to calm down and hang out for a minute, something like that. What you want to do is actually knock it down to single shot mode. Again, whatever your camera calls it, but this means one fire of the button means one fire of the shutter. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. It's not hold it down and it continues to fire. You just want a single photo for a single shutter focus, or for a single shutter fire. This is what this is for. You need to run that single shot shutter mode, because it'll help you out. It'll keep everything from doing those micro jitters, and it'll be easier when you're trying to get those crisp photos. So the third thing you got to think about when you're talking about these sharp photos is how you actually focus. So one thing that I like to do that I've set up on my camera, and I definitely advise you to at least try it out and see if you like it. It takes a little bit of learning, but I think you'll like it, is back button focusing. So essentially what this is actually setting up the AF on button on most cameras. It's a physical button on the back of the camera that allows you to use that as your autofocus. So normally if you don't have this set up, basically you half press your shutter and then you full press it to fire, and your half press is actually your autofocus. So it'll autofocus and fire, and it's doing autofocus, firing, and metering all in the same button basically. So I have mine actually set up for back button focusing. So what I do is I use that back button that says AF on as my autofocus, and then the shutter button is just half press for a meter and full press for firing the shutter. What this actually helps you do, in my opinion, is help with focusing and movement. So let me show you a quick video. So in this, I just have my subject, which is back focused at the moment. So by adjusting my camera and setting it how I want to, then hitting that back focus button, all I'm doing is selecting that new focus point. So what's really great about selecting back button focus instead of trying to do it with the shutter is the fact that I can do both at the same time with two different buttons, so it gives me a little bit more control. So when I move it down and I select my focus, it becomes focused and it locks focus. So I can move my camera left to right in this instance, which you see, and it doesn't lose focus. So I can recompose without changing my focus point when I have all of these features set up with the single point autofocus and the right metering location and the single point metering. So this is really good when you're trying to do this. Instead of trying to do all of it with a single shutter button, you can move your shutter button basically to the back of the camera and make it a separate feature, select your focus, and then when you're ready, you fire the photo. So you go from something like this to something like this. So this is definitely worth trying out. Like I said, if it doesn't work for you and you like having it all on that same shutter button, do that instead. I'm just saying, this is definitely an idea. Back button focusing can be a pro move when you learn how to master it. So like I said, if you follow the beginning of this video and you did those 3 tips when I was talking about metering and focus and spot focusing and spot metering, if you do those things, this will make a whole lot more sense when I show you these examples. So this first one is actually a larger photo that I cropped down on, but because I did those first couple of steps, this photo was one that I could actually take a full body shot and bring it all the way down to basically where his face is the entire photo. And I shared this on Instagram and I've shared it on TikTok and here before, but this is a great example. If you nail focus, you can make any photo you want out of this. You can change the crop around all you want to, because when you have a good focus point and you have a good set camera, though, like the focus point is obviously, when I started way back, his head is basically the focus point. So it's not the eye. Like if we were standing here and you wanted to get that shot, my eye would probably be the only thing you're going to get in that spot focus. Versus, like I said, I'm standing pretty far back and it's a body shot, so his head is the whole thing that's in focus. So for this one, I can actually crop way down and still get everything in focus. And I could probably go a little bit farther for it. But that's all because I did the right steps at the very beginning. My second example are just some selfies that I've taken right here doing this exact same thing. And they gave me, if you've ever seen SNL at the very, like when they cut to commercial, they do some selfies with the guest that night or with the artist. That's what these reminded me of. And I still love them because they're perfectly shot. They are incredibly crisp, and if you want a good selfie, just as a good tip, put on clothes that you just absolutely love. Like if you feel like a baller in a suit, do that. If you like those chill vibes and you do shorts and a t-shirt and sunglasses, do that. That's just a practical tip for anybody. If you feel comfortable, your photos are going to come out a whole lot better. But these are just some photos that I got in that process of doing exactly what I said. Do the proper focusing points that I said, and then do the good little edits, make it very simple, and they'll come out of camera perfectly. But I also mentioned this isn't just selfies and portraiture. This is also can be done with anything when you're talking about inanimate objects or even animals. Let me show you this one of a fish that I got in an aquarium last summer on vacation. This is actually so amazing because this is shot through thick glass. So usually thick glass and light don't mix when you're trying to get a photo through it, because you'll end up getting a lot of glare and stuff like that. And then on top of that, refraction of water, if you're not familiar with that. So what your object is not where it's actually at and all that stuff. So all of those optics play into getting a solid photo, especially when you're talking about something like this. But doing the exact same thing, those same tips, doing proper metering and that spot focus will help out so much. So what I did with this one is I actually focused on just the eyeball, because like I said, also, if you focus on the eyeball of the subject, if the subject has an eyeball, that's where you need to focus, because if anything else is out of focus, it's okay, because that's what your bokeh of your lens and those fuzzy elements are for a lot of the times. And that's what we see a lot, is that people use those as kind of an enhancement of the photo. But as long as the actual eyeball of the subject, if it has one, is in focus, then you have a perfectly focused photo. Okay, so now that I've said all of that, hopefully you're sticking around and you've seen all of the different examples. You saw at the very beginning how I talked about different elements on what you can do inside the camera, and then also elements what you can do outside the camera. But overall, if you take any of these pieces and you use any of them in your focusing system or your camera or your photos, they will absolutely help you out. You don't have to do all of these things, nor should you do all of these things every single time. It depends on the photo. It depends on what you're trying to do. But I promise, if you do some of these or even all of these every once in a while, it will help you out with your photos, especially with sharpening and focusing. Thank you so much for checking this out. I really appreciate it. If you liked any of this content, or you saw any of the things that I pointed to in the cards above, or if you read the description below and you see anything else that you want to check out, please, please, please leave me a like on the video. I appreciate it so much. This is a new channel and it helps me out so much when you do stuff like that. If you want to, also definitely subscribe, because I have a ton more content coming out. Like I said, brand new channel, so I've got the sky is the limit for content. But beyond that, thank you so much for checking out this video, and I will see you in the next one. And I'm going to hit you with the as per usual. So peace out. Thanks so much.